I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint. This session is going to be a very interesting one, and I know we're having a large increase in the number of online viewers because of this session, which is terrific. And it's all about the Weather Service's initiative of the Weather Ready Nation, and we'll be hearing a lot about that over the next, I'd say, 90 minutes. And the first speaker is going to be Chris Strager, who is an advisor for science and services and in integration at the National Weather Service. So Chris has been instrumental in formatting and fulfilling the mission of creating a weather-ready nation, and he's a key developer of the National Weather Service roadmap, which is coming together right now, taking inputs from all sorts of folks, from internal to the Weather Service to external partners, emergency managers, which is a key direction of the National Weather Service in supporting decision-making. So I'm going to, without further ado, pull up Chris's presentation and introduce Chris right now. Chris, welcome to the Weather and Climate Summit, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Am I on, or do I need to switch?
You're good. Okay. Is it? Oh, talk for us.
Can you hear me okay now?
Okay. Yeah, let's make sure.
See, we don't get my very often in the National Weather Service. Rookie mistake here. Yeah, it's
Hear him okay? No? There you go, you're good now.
Now we got it? All right. Well, that's a way to open. Good morning, everybody. And again, thanks for having me here. My name is Chris Strager. And to go on to what Dave said, people ask, well, what do you do in this position? It's the advisor for science and service integration. One of the things that I get to do, and for me it's a dream job, I get to take a look ahead for the National Weather Service. Where are we going as an organization? Where do we want to be in 10 years? What's our focus going to be? And that's what I've been doing for just under 2 years now at the headquarters. And we've been doing building a weather-ready nation. What I'd like to do now for the next few minutes is go ahead and talk to you a little bit about what the background is of a weather-ready nation and where we're going with it and what our future plans are. Going back to 2011, when they asked me to come to Weather Service headquarters, it was starting out to be a little bit of a shaky year, and there was a lot of things going on. And I thought, well, this might be a good opportunity for Weather Ready Nation. And as it turned out, across the country in 2011, we had 14 separate $1 billion disasters. Everything from flooding in the upper Midwest to tornadoes across the Midwest, blizzards, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I think the one thing that really stuck with everybody, though, you look, what is the 2011 weather story? For us, it was the tornadoes across the southeast United States. Very proud of the job that our forecasters did in that storm with the advance notice that they gave. But we have to take a look. 500 people, over 500 people perished. Why? Why did some people not heed the warnings that came out? I was watching what came out from the National Weather Service. I was watching the Weather Channel as this whole thing unfolded, and I thought, at least in my eyes, that we were trying to get the message out as clearly and concisely as we did. But some people just did not take action. And this is what I want to get to with Weather Ready Nation. Part of the things that I want to get to is, why did people not heed the warnings? We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So in August of 2011, we roll out Weather Ready Nation. I think we're in good shape now. Okay, had a really interesting year in 2011, but then the way things work out, you roll something out, the next year nothing's going to happen. It's going to be a quiet year. People are going to say, why'd you do this Weather Ready Nation? So what happened in 2012? Well, we continued to trend. We had, the final total was 11 separate $1 billion disasters. For those out in Colorado, as you're painfully aware, this was a terrible year for wildfires. Other states across the country also suffered from wildfires. The drought monitor on the bottom left of the screen, you can see it got worse this year in terms of the drought. For those across the mid-Atlantic states, actually from Chicago on down to the Atlantic coast, you won't forget the June 29th derecho that raced through the region. And I told a little story last night at dinner, And I'm going to go ahead and say it again here just because it gets to the point of how do we communicate with people to get the hazards out. What is the issue that they're going to be facing? I said, well, we were proud. We had officers came out, and I heard on TV they're talking about 65 to 85 knots of wind coming down with this. I had a gentleman put his hand up. He said, Mr. Strager, he said, I understand that there's going to be 85 knots. He said, I don't know what a knot is, much less what 85 of them are going to do to me. And it hit home then. We're not talking about the impacts of the systems. What I wish we would have said, and I think we did in some subsequent statements, trees down, power lines down. You could be without power for days, if not a week. This is what I want to get at in terms of talking about the impacts to people and what we put out. Another item in the top left there, 2012 was the warmest year in U.S. history by 1 degree. It beat out 1998. And until I prepped for this presentation, I was trying to get out some other facts. I didn't realize this. We haven't had a month that was the coldest month since December in 1983. That's over 29 years now. We've gone without a single record cold month. I thought that was pretty interesting. Now in 2012, we get up to this point, and as a kid growing up, I was a real weather geek. I loved to watch this, and after every year, you kind of think, what is going to be the main weather story for this given year that you're in? As you see a storm develop, is this going to be it? As a hurricane develops in the Gulf, is this going to be it? And I thought we had it. We had the derecho, Isaac came up, and then along came Sandy. So I think it's safe to say now for 2012, the most memorable weather event is going to be Sandy. There's already been a lot said about Sandy. What I'd like to do for just the next few minutes, though, is not go for Sandy from a meteorological standpoint, but I want to talk about Sandy from an impacts viewpoint. And for Sandy's societal and economic impacts, the latest toll I had in the U.S., 72 direct deaths from Sandy, and the numbers I was given was 75 outside the United States. And for a storm in this day and age to be able to produce over $65 billion worth of damage, to me, is just incredible. How much of that could we possibly mitigate? How much of that is just that we're in harm's way? I can't say, but I just think that number is staggering. 8.5 million people at the height of the storm without power. You can see the airline flights canceled. And then this is another interesting item, the evacuations. 400 miles of coastline evacuated. When you use a rough estimate, if it takes $1 million to evacuate 1 mile of coastline, you can see that certainly adds up. And not to mention the inconvenience for the people in the hospitals, the elderly that had to be moved during the storm. So there's a lot of impact there, and that's an understatement. Now, with all of this coming, I think we can have some pretty interesting discussions. We can get some scientists in a quarter and say, well, it's global warming that's causing this. We can get another camp say, it's not global warming, it's climate change that's doing this. We're going to have people that say, well, sea level's going to rise this much. No, it's going to rise this much. I think the bottom line is we as a society now are increasingly vulnerable to what's going on. It doesn't matter what's causing it, at least in my eyes for this, we are more vulnerable. And one reason is there's just more of us than there ever used to be now. You can see the chart in the top left, world population. By the year 2020, it's supposed to be up around 8 billion people. You can see how this has increased. Not only are there more of us, we're moving to more vulnerable locations. Check out in the bottom left, 53% now of the population of the United States lives in what's considered a coastal community. And that has gone up 47% in the last 40 years. So not only are there more of us, we're going to places where it's more dangerous for us in terms of coastal impacts. And that is going to be increasing over the coming years. By the year 2020, that's going to rise. It's projected to rise another 8%. So we're putting ourselves in harm's way to a certain extent. And then in the bottom right, it shows the slow progression since 1790 of the population center of the United States, going from the East Coast, of course, in 1790. And Plato, Missouri now is the population center, if you would, of the United States. And the one thing that this shows, and I don't think anybody should be surprised about that, but as we migrate farther west, we really make a little bit more difficult for ourselves some of the problems we have. I heard somebody talk to me, said, Chris, it's great you're doing the meteorology part of it, but you know, with hydrology, water is going to become the next oil over the next decade. So we're moving people now into areas, arid areas, where they're not used to supporting large populations. As was seen here with the wildfires last summer, the urban tree interface now, for people we're moving into areas that used to burn remotely. Nobody was impacted or very minimal impact. Now we have population centers. And that is all what caused me to want to get into this business of doing Weather Ready Nation. One last thing on the sector impact. I wanted to throw this up too because people say, well, what are you talking about? Okay, they moved to the coast, that's fine. Give me an example now. I like to use a phrase that I think society today, in terms of weather, operates on a razor's edge. We're doing more and more things. There's not much room for error, and I think the airline industry is one of it. $40 billion in delays annually to the United States, and weather is responsible for 2/3 of those delays. We've taken steps in the Weather Service, and that's a whole different briefing, but we're trying to get more concise, accurate information out to the FAA. And I don't know if it's so much the accuracy, it's the consistency of the information, and it's relating directly to the FAA in terms that they can understand. I've read somewhere that the air traffic is going to double by the year 2020. There's no margin for error anymore. So we have to continuously look for ways to improve our accuracy and also to improve on the methods with which we deliver that information to our customers. Now, building a weather-ready nation. People came up to me. I was at the American Meteorological Society meeting last week. I was honored to be able to speak at the student convention. And I'll tell you what, if you're ever feeling your energy getting down a little bit and you need your batteries recharged, go out and meet the students there. 600 strong came to the AMS conference last week, and it was a real pleasure to be able to speak to them. But the questions I was getting is, Chris, what is a weather-ready nation? Is this like a bumper sticker that you guys are putting on? What does it mean? Is it a slogan? What is it to me, and what does it mean? It's a very simple thing. My explanation is just simply about helping build community resilience in the face of extreme weather. And I'll put another tag on there that is not on a slide. That is before, during, and after the event, because the involvement doesn't end. As anybody who's worked with the Red Cross or emergency management, it goes on well after the disaster. And for us, it's why I'm so glad to be here with you today. It's all about partnerships, not just the Weather Service. It's the emergency management, academia. I will give this out to the crowd here for your consideration. I think the meteorologists and hydrologists we turn out today have to be of a broader scope. It can't just be that very narrow focus on meteorology now. I think we have to go beyond computers, social science, communications, because how do you deliver that message to your customers? I can have the best forecasts in the world, but if I can't communicate to you in terms that you can understand, then I've failed at the forecast. The private sector, the broadcast media, we couldn't get the message out without you all. Thank you so much. Social science, again, how is that message delivered? So what did we do in the National Weather Service? They said, okay, this weather-ready nation is great, Chris, but how are we going to get to this? And I've been a field forecaster for the majority of my career, and I want to see the specifics. Where does the rubber meet the road? How are we really going to get to this? So they asked me to develop a roadmap to a weather-ready nation for the National Weather Service. And a few of the things we take away, again, that's a whole nother brief and we won't go there, but using the local relationships that we've built over the last 20 to 30 years with our core partners, emergency managers, to help get the communities ready. The science and technology. I understand there's going to be a briefing later on this week on dual pole radar, one of the items that we're trying to bring in, and we're almost finished deploying it now. And I think the last one is probably the most important, at least in my eyes. It's empowering the workforce. And what does that mean? We have, I think as meteorologists, I think with possible exception of this room, you all are the extroverts in what we do in the field. But by and large, meteorologists are a somewhat introverted group. It's taking the meteorologists that's used to being behind a computer screen, and there's still going to be room for that and a lot of effort for the great science and technology, but I want to see the next breed of meteorologists and hydrologists that can get out with the crowd, get out with the customers, and talk with them. I want them to be able to go into an emergency situation, be able to show the forecasts and the impacts in clear, concise terms, and it's going to take some training to do that. And we're calling this new breed of meteorologists, hydrologists, emergency response specialists, ERSs, and we're training them to go both on-site and do remote decision support to these customers. Now, emergency response specialists, Really not much of a change. They continue to work 24/7 for the decision makers. We realize we can't be everywhere. We're not going to try to be everywhere, nor should we be everywhere. But I would like to be able to get in remotely to locations so we can work with the decision makers. If they have questions for us, we can clarify the forecast for them. The impacts catalog, it goes far beyond just giving a forecast, punching the button and saying, okay, that's it, I'm done. What are the impacts of these forecasts going to be on our key customers? Participate in core partner exercises and plannings. I heard from Craig Fugate, he said, the worst time to be giving out a business card to an associate is not during a disaster. It should be before, during tabletop exercises, working with them before the disaster happens. And then finally, taking and getting these new technologies incorporated into our decision support services. Now, as I did this, we all know that there are financially challenging times for everybody out there. And what we didn't want to do and what we weren't able to do is to take these concepts and just go broad brush across the National Weather Service. This is our previous director of the Weather Service, Jack Hayes' concept to build a little, test a little, and field a little. So what we did is we took 6 pilot projects across the United States to try and test the concepts of the Weather Ready Nation roadmap. And in a nutshell and briefly, we have 2 more at headquarters level at the Operations Center. I thought it was interesting when I first came to headquarters 2 years ago that there wasn't really a nerve center. When something happens and the director of the Weather Service wants to know what's going on, where is that nerve center? Where does all the information come? Where does that information get coordinated and passed up to NOAA, to the Department of Commerce, to the White House? Where does it get collected from the offices below? And the Operations Center is now filling that void. We also have a regional operations center. For those of you not familiar with the Weather Service, we have 6 different National Weather Service regions, and each of them have anywhere between 30 and 40 field offices that serve underneath them. And this is another way to coordinate the efforts of the field and gather that information to the headquarters. A couple other things, we have 4 other pilot projects that are in the field. I'll briefly talk about one of them. If you say, well, what in the world is that in the top right corner? This is actually part of the initiative that meteorologists in charge, Ken Graham and his folks down in New Orleans office, took upon themselves. That's a discarded 38-foot FEMA trailer that was sitting vacant in the field. And FEMA said, do you want it? We said, sure, we'll take it. And so at no cost, they went ahead through self-help projects and a lot of sweat equity, went ahead and tore that down completely, and with some sponsorships, went ahead, built that back up now. And it doesn't work for every part of the country, but down in the New Orleans area, local emergency management officials love having this. They just went ahead and deployed for the recent flooding down there, on-site support to the emergency operators, and they call it the Severe Weather Emergency Response Vehicle, the SWERV. I said they called it the SWERV because Ken can't drive very well, but that's what they called it anyway. We have a few other decision support in an urban environment, trying to get all of the players in the D.C. area, the federal, the local, the state, get everybody to work together on common decisions for big events. Environmental studies. No, we're not trying to become environmental ecological forecasters, but what we are trying to do is make sure that the data that we give the ecological forecasters is proper data in a format that they can use. Then finally, trying to get down into the science of it, the mesoscale meteorology, science of operations, running that from Charleston, West Virginia. Now, having said all that, what can you do? We need your help. We really need your help. We want to get this out to the communities. We want to help communicate this to them. We're looking at ideas within the National Weather Service. We would love to be able to work with you to get you a clear, concise message that maybe you can deliver to the people. We're looking for possibly media and other corporations to become weather-ready ambassadors. And there's more that we can flesh out from that discussion. But we invite you to join with us in National Dialogue, and I want to thank you for all that you've already done on this, and I look forward to working with you in the future on a Weather Ready Nation. Thank you.